There's a lot of great roguelites out there that I tend to miss due to just not having enough time in a day. But there's one game that I've always had an interest in trying due to very high praise, great art style, and fluid looking combat. And the creators have actually reached out to me about collaborating and making content on the game. And I thought, how could I say no? So big thanks to Warm Snow for sponsoring this entire video and sending me a PlayStation 5 copy of the game to play and review. So let's get into everything that this game has to offer. Firstly, let's talk about the story. You play as a character named Bayon in the year 27. What a year. And the world is protected by 5 houses. But a warm snow plunges the world into chaos when it starts turning people into uncontrollable monsters. And your job is to confront the 5 houses and defeat them all. And I like that simple story. It tells us immediately how long a run is, which is about 5 chapters. And then we also have an easy prologue that almost anyone could beat. But something that's interesting with this game is after you beat a run, you unlock a new type of run called nightmare runs, but we'll get into those soon. Let's talk about a regular run first. A normal run consists of you going through 5 chapters, with each chapter having its own unique enemies and challenging boss fight at the end. Throughout the chapter, you go room by room by defeating enemies and then have a choice between 2 or 3 rewards for your next room. Sometimes you won't have a choice if it's a store or a mini boss next. The choices you have are typically a relic, which has 4 different options that can be used at any different time during the game, as it can be used as a normal item that's used with rage, which is in the top left corner, that seems to charge up by hitting enemies with your melee attack. But then relics also give general buffs to melee attacks, your dash, and an ongoing buff. And the great thing is you can choose where you want to put your relic, and all the relics are quite unique, I'd say, and the game even has tons of elemental effects with poison, freeze, electricity, fire, and even drunk. Building a run based off one of those is incredibly satisfying. Now, your other rooms include stuff that you would expect. You have a healing room, which is simple, an elite enemy room, which has an enemy drop a weapon, relic, or scroll, a scroll room, which I found to be the most valuable as the buffs in this game can get insane. Picking up a scroll gives you an option to choose between 1 to 3 buffs, and all have a general impact on your run. And finally, one last room is a blue soul room, which is the main currency that's used to enhance and change weapons and buy items in the shop. Those are the general routes that you can take inside of a run all throughout the 5 chapters, but there's still more to talk about inside of a run. And we talked about the blue currency a little bit, the blue souls. They're the main currency in the game inside of a run. But now let's talk about the red souls. They're another currency in the game which helps with meta progression, and both types of run have their own meta progression, so let's talk about this one first. Red souls are found after killing a main boss, not a mini boss. But what I love about this meta progression after a run is how consistently cheap it is. You get about 7 red souls on winning a run, but everything only costs 1 red soul total, and it's very easy to follow and unlock more, which helps leads to a totally busted run, which is super satisfying with how fast you can move and how fast you can eliminate enemies. Look how fast I destroyed this boss. That's insane. And while that's the general gist of everything inside a regular run, and it's super easy to follow and easy to play, a win and run takes about an hour. But nightmare runs are where the game gets insanely hard and it's easier to jump into them. A nightmare run has you play through the game as fast as possible, but the room setup has you pick which area you want to go to, and each area has its own boss, but the entire time your clarity meter, which is in the top left, is going down. And if it reaches 0, you lose. Also, if you lose all your life, you lose, but that's expected. You get the same general items in this mode with weapons, relics, and scrolls, and the combat's exactly the same. But each room ends with you choosing which item you want, whether it be a relic, a scroll page, blue souls, a weapon, healing, or a seal of clarity, which I'm unsure of what it does still. I thought it was going to maybe lower the nightmare difficulty, but I still don't see any effect as of making this video. But this game mode is insanely hard as the meta progression is locked behind bosses, just like the regular game mode. And as of recording this, I still don't have any yellow souls, but it takes about 8 minutes or less to get to the first boss, so it's very easy to jump into a nightmare run and just lose track of time. And let me tell you, these bosses are much harder compared to a normal run. So if you felt normal runs were a bit too easy, these will give you a run for your money. And I'll say it's just as easy to get a busted run in this game and melt enemies as it is in the normal mode, but you just have to keep your eye on the clarity meter the whole time. But this mode is super fun. Both a regular and a nightmare run are super simple and super easy to jump into and just lose track of time. And I love the simplicity of the red soul upgrades and how easy it is to see meta progression and how easy it is to track it. I do wish the yellow meta progression with the yellow souls was a tad easier, but it's called nightmare mode for a reason. It's gonna be hard. But I'm sure once you get the meta progression, it gets a lot easier as you can actually save clarity and not just lose it constantly. And those are the two main modes I've found in my time of playing so far. And before you start every run, you get to pick what type of secondary item you'll have with your flying swords, which you shoot out at enemies, and then you use your right trigger to sheath them all back. But to be honest, I've leaned towards the blessing that replaces the swords with a more powerful melee attack when you sheath. But you need to beat bosses to unlock that, which is really the only thing outside of a run minus meta progression. It's the blessings. After killing a boss in a main run, you unlock the ability to worship in front of a statue of the boss before a run and choose that buff for your swords. You only get to choose one buff every single run, but that will determine what type of run you're gonna have. It's a nice addition to keep runs feeling fresh. And then of course you have interactable items that allow you to see your progress with seeing all the different relics, all the different weapons, all the different NPCs, that type of stuff. And then of course you can change the difficulty once you actually win a run, and the difficulty seems to add a good amount of changes. Really, the amount of potential variety of blessings, each relic having 4 different uses, all the weapons and their different affixes, the scrolls buffing you, it keeps every run feeling so unique, and I love that in a roguelite. On top of that, the animations are top notch, especially on the consoles. They look fantastic, and the art style, I love it. Now this video may be sponsored, but I'm going to say there are a few negatives with this game, but none of it's really gameplay and just more small critiques in some areas that they could fix. The text in some areas is just a little off. We're missing a whole letter like in the beginning of confirm right here. It's missing an M, unless they intended that. And then I found myself getting stuck in some areas or on random objects. The object was there, but the direction I was trying to go was annoying and it just felt off. And then some enemies in the 4th chapter stink. But that's not a bad thing. That's just me trying to figure out the moveset. But my winning runs, I was able to melt them, so... But yeah, this game is fantastic, and I'd highly recommend it to any action roguelite fan. And I'm gonna say this, I think this game wants you to beat it and win a run as soon as possible, so you get to see how hard it can become. Those nightmare runs are freaking nuts, but I love it because it's so easy to just jump into another one. But yeah, the combat's fantastic. It feels fluid. The art style is great. The music, I don't really notice it too much. The bosses scale pretty well. The final boss is quite hard, even with a busted run. And the meta progression might be some of my favorite I've ever seen in a roguelite with how cheap it stays. All you have to do is win some runs against some bosses, and that takes like an hour. Honestly, great game. Huge thanks again to Warm Snow for sponsoring this entire video. Be sure to check the links in the description to be able to join in on this fun anywhere you go. And yeah, it's an action roguelite you don't want to miss. So thank you for watching this video, and yeah, I'll see you next time.